Mesoamerican Reef is a very large and beautiful barrier reef, which attracts many people for diving vacations. The diver in today's video was a returning visitor and hitting her 700th dive here. However, she got separated from her diving buddy when diving downward, and she was never seen again in one piece. Anthony's Key Resort is an all-inclusive resort located in Roatan, Honduras. It promises to be a memorable experience, providing maximum comfort and wonderful nature. There are lots of things you can do at Anthony's Key Resort. You can simply relax and watch the ocean, or go snorkeling, diving, and lots more. It's cradled by the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef System, which happens to be the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere. It stretches over 700 miles from the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula down through the Honduran Bay Islands. It touches the coast of 4 countries: Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. You'll see numerous species of stony coral, mollusk, and marine animals like dolphins, turtles, and stingrays. Coming to Anthony's Key Resort will make you feel the beauty of nature, the beauty of culture, and the beauty of the island. Every day proves to be another day for exploration and the unveiling of those things you never thought of. That's why many great divers who want both water exploration and comfort on land have chosen this resort to enjoy their holiday. Maureen Lalonde and her husband Pierre went for a 5-week trip at Anthony's Key Resort. Maureen was a Canadian citizen and a diver waiting to hit her 700th dive here. And this wasn't her first time at the resort. She visits several times a year for diving adventures. Pierre wasn't a diver like his wife Maureen, but they usually came together to the resort. Both Maureen and Pierre are lovely people who always desire to meet new people. The couple recently met another couple, Terry and his wife, who were also divers. Maureen and Pierre invited Terry and his wife to dinner that very night before the accident. The following day, January 8, 2017, which was the day of their dive, all the boats on the sea had to be moved to the other side of the island by the airport because that side of the sea was calmer than where they initially were. Terry, Maureen, Clay, and some other divers were aboard the same boat with the dive master appointed for them. Maureen had all of her diving equipment with her, except her weights, which were kept under the custody of their dive master. While still on the boat, their dive master briefed them about the dive they were about to start. The divers were paired. Maureen and the dive master were paired together. Terry and Clay were paired together, and they were the first to enter the water. They continued diving through the mooring line, and they waited at 30 feet on top of the wall for the other teams. Another pair, a father and son, entered the water too. The 2 groups were waiting for the last group to enter the water. They continued their dive when the last group didn't enter on time. Besides, they already went about 200 feet away from the back of the boat before the last group entered, so they couldn't see them. They heard the dive master banging on his tank while helping one of the divers equalize at about 20 feet. The dive master repeatedly banged on his tank, but the 4 divers that were already in the water continued diving deeper. Terry saw the dive master on a nosedive, waving with one hand and banging his tank with the other. By the time the other 4 divers got to about 80 feet, Terry couldn't see the dive master, who had been seen on a downward dive earlier. Before Terry knew what was happening, his dive buddy also went out of sight. Terry continued his dive to about 100 feet before leveling up. He turned on his flashlight and followed the 3 bubble trails he had seen earlier. Terry started his ascent up to 80 feet, where he discovered that the young boy who was paired with his father had been separated from him, so he had him stay together with him, and within 3 minutes the father met them there. The 3 of them used their flashlights as they continued diving for another 5 minutes. At this time, Terry told them they had to return to the boat. They knew something had gone wrong with their dive, thinking about the continuous banging of their dive master, coupled with the fact that he was seen in a downward dive, and Maureen wasn't with him. By the time they were at their safety stop at 15 feet, the dive master had already dived past them, and he had also removed his mask when he got to the surface. They saw him talking with the boat captain and then returned to the water. Terry, the father, and the son got to the boat before Clay, whom they'd lost contact with in the water. Clay joined the other 3 divers in the boat not too long after these 3 divers came to the boat. Clay told Terry he had gone about 173 feet deep. though his dive computer was flashing error messages at him. Terry then told Clay to return into the water to about 30 feet, since he still had more than 1,000 psi left in his tank. Terry assured him that he would be his safety diver. So as they entered the water, the dive master, who had been down to about 200 feet, was returning to the surface. The dive master spoke again with the captain and returned to the water to a depth of about 100 feet. Terry and Clay, who were waiting between 20 and 30 feet, saw him dive down. After about 16 minutes, the dive master made his ascent to where Terry and Clay were, and they all returned to the surface and entered the boat. The dive master then told them he saw Maureen, who had her arms folded and her head tilted to one side as she was going down with her feet first. He complained that with all of his banging and gestures, Maureen responded to none. Because Maureen was going downward with no response or control, so to speak, the dive master lost sight of her at about 200 feet. But the place she was going down to was about 400 to 500 feet deeper. The dive master and Clay had to return to the water in search of Maureen. 2 dive masters from another boat also joined the search, but none of them had a positive outcome. When the search party returned to the boat, their dive master complained about having pain in his right shoulder joint, while Clay complained about having a headache. What had happened to Maureen was still a mystery to them as they departed from the dive site. What could have happened to an experienced diver like Maureen, who was having her 700th dive that day? How would she be having a downward dive, since she knew the danger attached to it? There are lots of things that could have resulted in that downward movement. On her adventure, she may have had vertigo, a stroke, a flooded regulator, water inhalation, or something else, though being overweight might have added to the downward movement that wasn't seen as her primary factor. After several failed attempts by divers to reach the accident scene in search of Maureen, relief forces and some other people also joined the search, both on land and in the sea. Her husband, too, couldn't help but join the search team. They all searched continuously for 1 week, all to no avail. They searched through the Omoa sector, adjacent to Guatemala. They searched the Honduran islands of Utila also. There was nothing found in all these places until they got to a road that leads to French Harbor, on the island of Roatan, where they found Maureen's body by the roadside. Her body was no longer intact, as the body was found split into 2 pieces and one of her legs was missing. How could the body of a diver who was last seen in the waters of Anthony's Key Resort find its way to the island of Roatan? What could have torn her body apart? Could it have been a shark attack from the shark dive that is nearby in the south of the area? So many unexplained questions about the cause of her mishap remain, yet no one knows exactly what happened to her in the deep, cold waters of Roatan resorts. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting dive story.